So yesterday, two things got me very excited about Microsoft Flight Simulator. Number one was the World Update 11 for Canada, and number two is this, which is the Cessna 195. I'm going to go through a little bit of history on the aircraft, firing it up, taking off, cruising, and landing. I'll do timestamps down below if in case you want to just jump to a certain point to watch those sections. So a little history on the Cessna 195. It was made in 1947. There was about 1,100 of them made. There was a military version used by the Air Force and the Army that went by the LC-126. It was a unique aircraft for Cessna because it was their first all-aluminum frame, and it was the last radial engine that they did, and it's got that giant 7-piston, 300 horsepower engine on the front. Cruise speeds are 170 miles an hour. Max cruise is 178. And fuel burn is not horrible. Once you get cruise settings, you should be around 16 gallons per hour based on altitude. And the fun fact that I read about it, which was shocking, is that it's known for burning a lot of oil. It has a 5-gallon oil capacity on it, but it burns half a gallon of oil an hour. So that adds up quickly. It needs a minimum of 2 gallons to operate. So not only does the fuel capacity only take you to 4.5 hours, I think also the oil capacity would not let you get much further than that as well. This, to me, is just a very cool airplane of this era. I love radial engines. I love tail draggers. They're challenging. They're fun. This was marketed as a business liner to be sold privately. That's because it was way more expensive than the other Cessnas, like the 140s. So they wanted to really market it towards this sort of like, you can take a bunch of people in it, but it's still kind of, business classy, that type of thing. So seating arrangements was 2 up front, 3 in the back on a bench seat, but it was known to be pretty roomy. But overall, I'm really excited about it, to learn how to fly it some more, do some cool flights in it. So let's go ahead and jump to the outside of the plane, walk around, and have a look at the textures. So looking on the outside, it's typical Carenado textures, which are always spot on. They have a really good attention to detail with, the rivets and the metal and how everything looks. It's all high-res textures. There's no sort of blurry low-res. I mean, even just looking inside the engine, the attention to detail in there is really something. So, I mean, if you're familiar with any of their aircraft, they've been doing the local legends with Asobo. The one thing that you don't get with the collaborations are the static elements. So things like your pitot tube covers and wheel chocks and tie downs and ground power units and things like that. So I think that's reflected in the price, though. This is only $14.99, where most of the aircraft that are from Carenado with all those features are about $24.99. So, you are missing out on some things, but you are getting a bargain. The window does have this interesting sort of green tint to it, which is the same on the inside, which we'll go ahead and hop on into and have a little look around in here. So you can see it has that bit of green tint to it. It's nice that it's got this sort of roof window as well. Typical of, like I said, of Carenado. If you're not familiar with them, this is the quality of their textures and everything. There's nothing blurry, pixelated, or anything anywhere that you look. It looks really well done. The only thing I will say about the interior, which is I don't think the fault of the textures or anything like that, is that it's just a little, well, beige in the front. It's not as cool as, say, like the Cessna 140 with, you know, chrome dials. You still have the piano keyboard here, but they tried to do a little bit of the styling with this sort of badging on your controls. But you know, it just, you know, it's not super exciting. I think the rest of the aircraft is, with, you know, these roll down windows, which I think are really cool. And then you do have the door that opens here. And then also in the back here, you do have interactive venting and a light. So it's not without its sort of like features. It's just not as inclusive, where normally you'd have like a little iPad that you'd bring up to turn on some static elements and look at some other sort of like settings for the plane. Your trim settings and everything are on the control unit here. So there's a trim wheel, aileron and rudder trims. Fuel selector is down there. This heater fuel shutoff, and behind here is like a fuel strainer drain. Those are both inoperative. And then there's just two switches here which aren't labeled that are inoperative. The rest, everything else is. So firing this up, there is a checklist in game to follow, where you can come up to the top here and bring up the checklist. It's very basic though, but if you need help going through the steps, it is there. With these simple aircraft, they're pretty much all similar as far as the startup procedures go. I'm going to go ahead and actually hide our controls out of the way to get a better view here. But you're going to go ahead and turn on your battery and your alternator. And then we can go ahead and switch on our beacon light to let everyone know we're about to fire up. You're going to bring in your mixture to be set, or, you know, for here it would be full rich. One thing they do call for is some aircraft say to have your prop full forward. This one does require it to be all the way back for startup. Then you have your magnetos here that you want to rotate over to both. And then if you wanted to or needed to, you do have a primer, which you can, you know, pull. You want to make sure that your carb heat, or they have it labeled as anti-ice engine, is in. And then all you need to do is you have a starter button here, and you can go ahead and actually, you know what, before I do that, I want to open up the window. You can do the old clear prop, and then you can go ahead and hit the starter button. And there she goes. Bringing a little bit of throttle. And you can see coming over, our temps are rising, pressure is there, fuel pressure, all that is all coming alive, which is good. So we can go ahead and switch on our avionics now. Switch our transponder over to standby. And if we come back to our main view, we can also go ahead, if we want to, turn on our speedo and our panel lights here. And then we do have these really cool landing lights that if we come look to the back here and we pop those on. How cool is that? I love those retractable landing lights. I just think that's super fun. So being this big, giant radial on the front, they're always hard to see over. Being a tail dragger, I would suggest setting up a nice nose-up view in order to get your best taxiing. So that's really the startup. Run up on it is typical with these planes as well, where you take it up to about 1700 RPMs or so, test your magnetos, make sure your controls are free and clear, test your brakes, and test your prop. Speaking of prop, we can go ahead and bring that all the way full forward now, and we're going to go ahead and taxi. So, looking off to our side, we do have a 140 right beside us, so we're going to have to do like a little bit of a U-turn here in order to get onto, I think it's runway 33 is what we're going to be flying on today. So, let's go ahead and get our taxi started. So we'll go ahead and remove the parking brake. And let's see how well we can get this thing not to fully spin around, but to actually get a nice controlled rotation here. Feels pretty darn good. Yeah, that felt nice. Very smooth. Some tail draggers, they're quite difficult to spin controlled like that because as your speed changes, they really want to kind of get really sensitive on you. So this is the runway here. We've got to go all the way down, turn around here on the actual runway. So once we get down to the end there and get spun around, we'll go ahead and get on in the air. All right, so we're just about to spin around here. Yeah, the taxi on this is very, very nice. Feels great. You got a little bit of wobble, but you know, it's very controllable, very smooth and elegant, if you will. All right, so for takeoff, you don't need flaps, and I will show you why. These flaps are all or none, and when you drop them, I mean, that's gotta be, I mean, it's definitely 40 degrees, if not more. The other cool thing with the flaps is that if we come to the outside of the plane, they actually are from underneath the wing, how they drop down, which I also think is cool. We'll go ahead and bring those back up though, because we do not need them. Alright, so let's get into our nose-up view, or looking over the nose as best as we can. We've got our mixture full forward and our prop full forward, and we're going to go full throttle. I got the brakes on still. Now, we want to rotate roughly around 65, 70 miles an hour. It accelerates up there quick, and that tail comes up pretty quickly, so not much longer after that tail comes up we can go ahead and rotate. That was the window closing, the reason why the engine got so quiet. It automatically closes on us. Takeoff, you can see it was super smooth. Felt nice, tail came up. It doesn't need much runway at all to get into the air. We can already now back off our RPMs a little bit, down to about 2100, and then back off our manifold pressure down to about 25, and that'll get us a nice sort of climb setting where we're not beating up the engine. We're only going up to 3000, so we're almost already there. And we can go ahead and start to level off and get our cruise settings set, which I'm going to do about 23 inches and drop our RPMs down to 2000. Go ahead and bring that nose down. Now this is where the trim wheel is sensitive. So I'm just sort of backing off my pressure on my yoke and trying to get the sweet spot with that trim as the airspeed increases. We'll probably balance off around 165 or so at this altitude, so not quite full cruise speed, and I'd say if that you went faster than that, it would get pretty twitchy as well. You can see we're burning down here. This is sort of your fuel computer, if you will. I forget the official name for it, but it'll show you on the top there your fuel burn. Below it right now we have it showing gallons used. If you hit this button, it cycles through your remaining gallons, and then your estimated time remaining, and then you have, if you have set things like your reserve and stuff like that, it'll tell you. But I usually just keep it on this screen here because really all I'm looking at is my current fuel burn to try and get that set, especially once you get to a higher altitude. You can see we climbed up a little bit there as I was talking and letting that vertical speed get a little far away. The trim on this is very similar to the Beech 18, so if you've flown that, it's very similar in its sensitivity. And what I said in that video was small changes have great effect, and it's the same thing for this. So I'll post a link to the Beech 18 full VFR flight up above, so if you want to watch that and check it out, you can. There's Castlegar there. You can see the lights. We're going to be coming in and landing on runway 33. Now this airport is pretty cool in the fact that it's daytime operation only, and that is down to these mountains that surround it. There is no guided approach because there's no straight approach. So they did try, and well, I shouldn't say try, they did succeed in getting some night takeoffs allowed by adding some beacons to the surrounding mountains to get you visual references while you're taking off at night. They only use those for things like air ambulances and stuff, though. So we're set up pretty nicely here. I'm going to start to back off the throttle. I'm going to come down to about 12 inches on manifold pressure and try and get that speed to drop down, which is coming down nicely. I'm gonna go ahead and drop those flaps down. Yeah, so cool. All right, so we're gonna get this slowed down. I'm gonna try and keep this road just to my right as we come in. We're really going to want to try and skim the side here. And as you can see by the poppy lights, we are high, but that's to be expected because we can't go much lower. See how close you get to this mountain. No room for error there. And like I said, this is one of the handcrafted airports, so you've got some cool things like, you know, some buildings with actual signs on them, and we'll go around the airport a little bit to check things out. Alright, so we're coming in. Let's go for no bounce. Two-wheeled landing. We have plenty of runway. That stall horn does come into play once that tail starts to lower. Slight bounce and not quite a two-wheel, but I'll take it. All right, flaps up. Bit of brakes, and we'll go ahead and pop off on exit or ramp Charlie here. Alright, so there we are. Go ahead and hop back on into the cockpit here. We'll do a quick shutdown procedure. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on my parking brake, and then we can go ahead and switch off our landing lights, and we'll leave the beacon on for now. We can turn off the panel lights, and then we can bring our prop all the way back, and then mixture will bring us to shut down. From there we can go ahead and turn off our beacon. Avionics can come off, and we can go ahead. I think that is all we've got left. Yep. And then we can do our alternator off and battery off. And there we go. We can go ahead and open up the door here, if it'll let me in the back. There we go. Open up the door and head on outside. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed. Please like and subscribe, and if you would like to leave me a comment down below if you found this video useful, if you've already purchased the Cessna 195, let me know your thoughts on it. And until next time, this is Sprocket Simulations wishing you happy flights and silky smooth landings. Take care.